Tens of thousands of drivers are caught on Wisconsin roads every year without a valid driver's license.
Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson joins us now to explain that almost nothing is done about it until someone dies.
Yeah, that's right, guys. Teron Claiborne was caught driving without a license 31 times in 12 years. That's right, a string that ended in the death of a Milwaukee Public Works employee. Only then was Claiborne charged with a crime. It's a deadly pattern we found happening over and over again. Aggressive driving.
All of a sudden, bam, you know.
Violent crashes.
You really need help, guys.
And tragic consequences.
It's been a rough day.
City leaders say Milwaukee has become a haven for reckless driving.
How the hell has the city traffic deteriorated so poorly?
But amidst all the twisted metal, a Fox 6 investigation finds a common thread.
She's on the phone crying, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry.
That becomes painfully apparent after someone dies.
And I hear all the time, I don't need a license to drive. I just need a car.
Robert Matagi led police on a high-speed chase before plowing into traffic at 13th and Morgan.
There's quite a large police and fire presence out here.
Marcellus Purifoy never even hit the brakes before crashing into a school bus and a pickup truck. And then there's Donald Creighton, Brian Vaughn, Jason Graham, James Jefferson, Kiara Wilkins, Laisha Wooten, and Teron Claiborne, all involved in fatal crashes. None with a valid driver's license.
You have a whole generation of kids who are now driving down the streets with absolutely no idea what the rules of the road.
In fact, many of them have never had a license to drive at all.
When I say no idea, they have no idea.
Derek Mosley,
morning everybody,
is Milwaukee's chief municipal judge.
Do you have a license?
No.
Have you ever had a license?
No.
Okay.
Ever since driver's ed was cut from public schools, he says, fewer young people even bother to get a license at the DMV.
I think that's the chief factor in the sheer number of people who were driving without a license.
If you don't have a license, the state still keeps track of your driving record as though you do. Over the past 3 years, more than 43,000 drivers have been cited in Milwaukee alone for driving without a valid license. That's enough to fill every seat at Miller Park.
Do you want to make a payment to lift that warrant?
Mosley says he only sees a fraction of them in court.
The law-abiding citizens are the ones who actually show up.
Others simply ignore the tickets and get right back on the road.
It was hard.
James Jefferson was driving with a revoked license 2 years ago when he T-boned a car, killing Philip Franklin.
Everybody says it gets easier, but
Candace Franklin's father.
I don't know.
It was like going to hell.
Dawn Treese's daughter, Marissa Ramos, was riding on the back of a motorcycle that slammed hard into a Ford Focus near 60th and Fairmount in 2016.
I have lost my only daughter and my best friend.
The motorcycle operator was Jason Graham, a 36-year-old man who's been driving his entire adult life, but never bothered to get a license.
He does whatever he wants to do, and that's the problem.
Teron Claiborne was stopped for driving with a suspended license in 2007 and got a $102 fine. He got stopped again 2 months later, then again, and 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 again, 31 times in 12 years.
Now they have the fine, now they have another fine, now they have another fine.
All told, Claiborne racked up more than $5,000 in fines he never paid.
This is one driver.
That's one driver. The joyride ended on February 8th when Claiborne crashed into 54-year-old Brian Rodriguez, a Milwaukee DPW worker out fixing potholes.
Mr. Rodriguez paid this guy's fines with his own life.
State Representative Joe Sanfilippo says there is little incentive for guys like Claiborne to stop driving.
Because in the end, they know nothing's going to happen to them.
In 2005, Governor Doyle signed a law making it a misdemeanor for an unlicensed driver to injure or kill someone in a crash. And in 2011, Governor Walker made it a felony. But it's a crime that only applies after someone is seriously hurt or killed.
That's the way the law is written.
Until then, driving while suspended in Wisconsin gets you a fine and nothing else, no matter how many times you do it.
I'm only allowed to do what the law allows me to do.
We do have to toughen those laws.
A few years ago, San Filippo introduced a bill that would impound the cars of repeat offenders.
You make that person pay all the costs of that vehicle, and more importantly, you make sure that they get their license reinstated.
But the bill ran into a roadblock with those who say the law would disproportionately affect drivers who are poor, not necessarily dangerous.
There isn't a judge in this state that I have ever spoken with that won't make payment arrangements.
But I'll put you on a payment plan, $20 a month for the rest.
Judge Mosley says his goal is to get suspended drivers back on a path to full licensure. But he says chronic offenders are frustrating because they're doing something to keep getting pulled over in the first place.
They run a red light. They pass somebody on the right. They pass into oncoming traffic. Something happens which alerts the officer.
In other words, they are driving dangerously.
If you're caught 6 times in 6 months driving without a license, you're a threat to safety.
In that case, a fat stack of tickets may not be worth the paper it's printed on.
Bring my AED now!
And as the worst offenders rack up fines,
Y'all gotta slow down.
innocent people are paying the price.
Studies published in 2011 and 2012 found 1 out of every 5 fatal crashes in the U.S. involves at least one driver who was not validly licensed. They are 9 times more likely to leave the scene of a crash, and drivers who've never been licensed were found to be more hazardous than those who got a license suspended or revoked. That squares with Judge Mosley's concern that some drivers have simply never had basic training in how the rules of the road work.
Well, State Representative San Filippo, who you interviewed, said that he tried to get tough on these repeat offenders several years back, but obviously failed with that. Does he plan on doing anything in the future to do this again?
As soon as our interview was over, he said absolutely he plans to do that again. It's a matter of the details. Representative San Filippo was clear, though. He says he does not want to punish otherwise safe drivers who simply can't afford to pay a fine. He wants to target the chronic offenders, especially the most dangerous drivers, and he wants to do that by taking their cars away. Of course, if any legislation is introduced, we're going to keep track of that. We'll keep you up to date. That's something we intend to follow if that's introduced.
It's eye-opening.
Yeah.
Epidemic, yeah. Brian, thank you.
All right.
Well, still to come here.